Hello, everyone. This is me, Arash Farahani. I am founder and CEO of Marketgram. And today we're going to talk about importance of collecting and analyzing data for organizations. Today, Paradis, our business analyst, was going to be the host, but unfortunately, she caught a flu. And just before the meeting, I was talking with her, and she sounded like an alien. So she couldn't host this webinar. So hopefully, or unfortunately, I am the host today, and Mostafa Darizerishki, he is the guest speaker. He is the engineering manager at a SaaS company based in Toronto. Hello, Mustafa. Thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you so much. Greeting from Toronto, Canada. My pleasure to be here. So I think that the best point to start is kind of like introduction for myself. I'm an engineering manager in a company, as Arash mentioned, Vision Critical, a SaaS company. We are like a CXM company here in Canada, like customer experience management. We do work with some companies like LinkedIn, Red Bull, like Air Canada, like Canadian Tire, like these are like some of the big names that they work with us as like a customer. Our main products are kind of like aiming the solutions that are going to cover data analytics, like collecting data and then giving our customers insights about what's going on inside their business. So I'm very happy to be here. I'm going to try my best to kind of like do a little bit of knowledge transfer based on our sort of like daily works that we do with different customers, the challenges that they have, what they are doing wrong and what they are doing right, and like anything that can help your organization or your team. Something that I really want to kind of like clarify in the beginning of this presentation is the word organization here really doesn't mean like a large scale organization per se, right? You know, like you can be just a team of 4 engineers, 3, I don't know, like designers, and still all the things that we are going to talk about today is going to apply to your business and to your work as well. I hope that it's going to be helpful for everybody.
That's great. Thank you so much for the warm introduction. So I can see that some other people join us. So welcome to this webinar again. The title is Importance of Collecting and Analyzing Data for Organizations. And again, Paradis, our business analyst, was going to be the host, but she got a flu. So I am the host today. So today we will talk about some reports about importance of data, how big this data is, how important it is. And then we will go through the definition of data-driven, and what is data-driven process, what is data-driven decisions, and how we can implement data-driven decisions in our organizations. Because based on what Mostafa just said, no matter how big your organization is, whether you are a small startup or you are a medium or a large enterprise, you have lots of data in your organizations which you may not be aware of. So in that case, you need to know how to use this data to generate useful actual insights about your organizations, about your customers, about your business model. Many things can be found from this data that you have even in your organizations. We're not talking about outside world. We can even generate insights internally. So, and at last, we will have a Q&A session where you can ask questions from Mostafa. And anytime you can put your comments in chat box. We will check them occasionally, and then we will answer them at the end of this webinar. So let's begin with the first slide. So go ahead, Mostafa.
Sure. Yeah. I think that like if you go back to like 5 years ago or 6 years ago, like a new term came up like in the computer science called data science, and like everybody was going around and was kind of like talking about this buzzword. You know, what does it mean to be like a data science? What does it mean even like data? And I remember in those days, like a data was kind of like connected like very directly to AI and machine learning, and everybody was looking for all these sort of like a fancy high tech things like, and for a long term, nobody knew that uh, what is really data. Like when we say data, is it like what we have in our database? Is it what we hear from our customers? Is it what we can find online? Like it's not our data, but it's like another company data, and we can just go and find it, get the data set, and do something with that. But I think in the past 2 years, like we have like a very good definition of the data. Like, in the data is kind of like a record of something that happened in past, right? You know, like it's logged, right? You know, like if like something happened, now you have log of that thing, and now you can go back to it and make some decisions based on that. But the funny thing here is like how much data you really are creating these days, right? And this is something that we as like a SaaS company, we challenge with that a lot. Like we make a like a infrastructure decision this year, and then the next year that's like totally useless. We invest like, let's say, millions of dollars on like kind of like making like a new decisions in our infrastructure for driving the data, and that becomes like useless the next year. And the reason for that is because like this data creation is kind of like going exponentially, like it's going crazy. Like, you know, how much data is available out there, and the growth is really crazy. I have like some of these numbers here, right? You know, like all of this, you can find it like online. Like, you know, if you just Google and like Google it, like how much data we create every year or every day, you know, like you can find all of this. But like my favorite one from this slide is like number two. If you take a look, you see in the last 2 years alone, we created like 90% of the data that we have today, right? You know, like all the data that we collected in the history of human being, 90% of that was like in the past like 2 years. And the funny part is like maybe some of you think that, okay, now that's because there was like new resources, we could collect data, but that's wrong, right? You know, like in the past 2 years, we didn't have like such a change in like the data sources, but we had this sort of like a revolution inside the organizations that you need to collect more data. So they started collecting more data, and that number two is a result of that. Otherwise, like the internet is not something that have been created like, you know, 2 years ago. It was always there. And I know that we had like very new services, but I just wanted to point out that the like this growth is because of the like, you know, the mindset change inside a lot of organizations. The other one that is my favorite from this slide is like number four, like, you know, 463 exabytes of data will be generated each day by humans as of 2025. I think that's like another very important factors for the companies or for like the teams that are kind of like building a business on data. You know, there is going to be like a future. There is going to be like a very bright future for anybody who is kind of like working on data. Um, I think like the other thing that's going to be like actually like a game changer in this market is the IoT. And you know, like IoT is like one of those new components of tech, right? You know, like a lot of companies are still, they don't know how they are going to use that. Like just to give you an example, like I was kind of like listening to like a customer sort of like an interview a couple of weeks ago, like one of the health organizations here in Toronto. And they were talking about like how they can get the data from these sort of like Apple Watches, right? And like use that to kind of like give some of their customers recommendation. And it was like a whole new sort of like a term for them, like, that you can get the data from Apple Watches and you can use that. Now, back to my first point, is like Apple Watches and all these IoT things were around like maybe from 5 years ago. I can remember like 5 years ago or 4 years ago, we had the first version of that. But up to this day, nobody thought about, okay, we can use that collected data to make some decisions. And like IoT is like a really game changer in everything. Like, how many devices are going to be available? 64 billion IoT devices is like a crazy number of devices, and like how much data that they are going to produce. So I think that my point from this first slide and the second slide is, it really is not about your data, right? Like it's about like the data in general that is out there and you can use it. Your organization is maybe like a very, very tiny sort of like a point in this whole ocean of data, but it's still, you can use that data and more data is going to become available for you. So first thing first, you need to educate yourself. All right.
So yeah, no, thank you so much, Mostafa. So I just saw that Professor Tony Belletti joined us. Thank you, Professor, for being here with us today. He's the guy in Ottawa and associate professor at Carleton team program. And then we have Eduardo Belletti. He's founder and CEO of ScaleCap. So and others also join us. So thank you all of you for being here with us today. To just add a point to just what Mostafa said. Data is the backbone of in artificial intelligence and machine learning. Without data, it's like the fuel to a machine, where without that fuel, no machine can start its engine. And I was just reading an article a few days ago, which said that by 2013, AI will add 15% to the global GDP, which is a huge number. So yeah, just back to what Mostafa said, we had this data before. We didn't know how to use it. What we can do with this data, and still. When we are talking with our clients, we know some organizations that they are generating tons of data, but it has been until recently that we could tell them that, all right, with that kind of knowledge, you can see what your customers need, what you can build next, so and many other things. So let's go back to Mostafa and see what's for us in the next.
Sure. Just I kind of like based on what you mentioned, I just posted something in the chat, like Competing in the Age of AI, like such a great book. Like if you're looking for kind of like some of the opportunities, like how you can leverage AI in your business and how it's going to change the future from sort of like a business point of view. Like there's this amazing book that I just recently finished that, and I kind of like highly recommend that to everybody who is interested. All right. I think that now I'm going to try kind of like to narrow down my sort of like talk to what I am here for. I think just to give you like a little bit of background, like when I started my career, like, many years ago as like a young software engineer, we were always kind of like very motivated that, hey, let's go and build this thing. And because, it was cool, because I knew it, like, because something is telling me I have to build it. And we always failed, right? This is the reality. Like, without any success, we built a lot of things. So what I'm going to talk about today is something that kind of like I experienced that myself, like, in my personal career, my personal life, and still up to this day, like every day in every meeting, like we are challenging with that. I really like the sort of like this. I got this definition from Wikipedia, right? And I think that it's very, very accurate and like about what does it mean, like data driven is just means that if you want to do like an activity rather than talking about kind of like your intuition, you go with data, right? Like if you say that, okay, my gut is telling me that I should do that, right? We should say that, oh, you're wrong, and you should go and kind of like um, come up with some data that sort of, you know, support your idea. This data-driven, you hear that in like the product development, you hear that in security, like, data-driven security is like it's such a interesting topic in the software engineering, like, like a very good example of that is like all the banking systems, right? Like the data that comes to the system, they analyze that and then they make a decision on should they block this IP or no, like a lot of things behind that. Data-driven marketing, I think this is something that uh, is kind of like more kind of like easier to understand because we deal with that every day, right? Like if you're going to um, launch a new product, did we do like enough research before going and building that in a scale or no? But there is like, if you go in next slide, like there is a like a more basic term, right? I know it's super abstract. I know that it seems like very clear, but this very clear, obvious thing, I've seen that like missing in a lot of organizations. Before that, I was working for Sony Canada, like, and I could see the challenge there. I still see the challenge, like, in my company and in other companies that we work with them. And it's about like data-driven decision is about if you want to make a decision, right? Go with some data. That data, like, not necessarily means your data, but like it could be like anybody else data, and you need to go and do some research before you make any decision on that. I just want to give you an example of like one of the challenges that today, right now, I'm dealing with in my team and in the whole organization that I work for. So there's this concept of like a roadmap, right? Like we define like a roadmap for our next year and next quarters, and some of the items that are coming from the product management team, we feel that are not kind of like supported by some data. Like, if you're going to build this thing based on what? Like, this is like the question that the engineering team always asks, right? If you're going to add this feature to our product, uh, what is the data that is showing us this thing? Like, one customer or the fact that we think this is the best idea doesn't really add some values. We had in the past built some stuffs, right? Like we added like very, very complicated features to our product, which took us like 4 or 5 months. And we know today that nobody is using that, right? This is the sad story. But we could always kind of like do the research before going for building. So the data-driven decision can be happened by like a lot of type of data, right? You can have like some explicit data, right? Which is like, hey, go out there and ask the questions, right? This is one of the solutions that we provide in Vision Critical. We have like a survey engine. You can go build surveys and send that to your community if you have any, like, and then we are going to analyze the data for you. User testing, I think, is another one that is very famous and very well known. You're building like a product, find a group of users, ask them to try your product, like, and then get the feedback from them and try to improve that. Test market. This is actually a very interesting one. I was like talking to like one of my friends who works here for, yeah, like a big sort of like a supermarket chain, like they have like an online sort of like a shopping here in Canada. And he was saying that before they go for kind of like making a contract with like a supplier, they put the products online. They don't have that in their sort of like inventory, but they just put it online to see like, if their customers are interested in that, and yeah, like if there is like a significant number of the customers, then they go for like, other sort of like a business actions. But these are like very explicit data, right? But like you can just go ask and analyze that. But what about the big data, right? Like, and the big data, I think, is the one that is not kind of like respected in the organizations as it should be, right? And our focus today is going to be on this big data portion. We have that organization have some data, and as part of as an organization, we are making decisions every day, like, doesn't matter small or big. We are making decisions. We want to say how you can kind of like use the data that you have or the data that is available out there to make these decisions. Uh, so if we go for next slide, these are like I try to come up with like three interesting examples that I have seen, like, while working with different companies, or I've heard it from like, other companies that are kind of like in the same business as we are. The first one is sort of like my favorite one. The Netflix one, probably you guys all know this famous show called House of Cards, right? And the story behind that, I've heard it from like one of the business developers in that time in Netflix, how they came up with this idea of like House of Cards. So first of all, like House of Cards was had like a British version of that, right? Like House of Cards wasn't built with Netflix. There was like a British version of that before. And actually what happened, there was like and to tell you, it was like $100 million investment from Netflix to create that TV show. So he said that they had like 3 points of data before they go for building this thing. They knew that David Fincher, who kind of like is the director of the Social Network, is a guy who most of the users has finished his TV shows from 0 to 100, right? Like if he had like a movie, if they started, then they finished that. They knew that the British version of the House of Cards has been like well watched, like, very famous and like, good. And then they knew that like those users who watched the British versions of House of Cards, they watched the Kevin Spacey films or other films which was directed by David Fincher. So in that sort of like, this one kind of like based on what I've heard, that one was the first time that Netflix made like a business decision on like some data to go and do like such a crazy investment on like a TV show. And the result of that, amazing, right? They could do that. And after that point, this one became like a pipeline in Netflix. Hey, we are going to analyze the data, who is watching what, where, when. And based on that, we are going to decide if the Netflix kind of like the producers should go and create like this new TV show. They're all like very, very amazing stories about how Netflix uses the data, and like the recommender system. I didn't want to go over that because that's like a whole new story. The other one, like there is this company. Yeah, sorry that I don't use some names here. This is because just to respect some of the privacies. But like this venture capital company who had like a portfolio of like 10, 12 companies, and how they use the data to see which company they should invest on next. And basically, in a nutshell, what they look into is like, who are the directors, who are kind of like the CEO there, like, the kind of like the relationship between the CEOs and the team, and the kind of like the success and growth of those companies is what they use for. Before that, it was just like a group of experienced investors who was making a decision. But today, it's not like that anymore. They look at the data, who is the company, what is who are behind the company, and then they're going to make a decision on that. No data, no decision, like period. Like, because somebody has like experience, let's say 20 years in this market, it doesn't mean necessarily that that's the right decision if they say. And the last one, I think that I briefly talked about it, but rather than you go and make like a contract with some suppliers, just put the product on your website and see it's something that your customers are kind of like interested in. And then you can go for further things. Yeah, so
So
this is pretty much, yeah, go ahead.
yeah,
Arash.
so sorry for the interruption. I've heard this kind of like the same story about Marvel comic books, which right now they are collecting users' feedbacks about their comics in order to create the next episodes of their series. I mean, that's kind of like a good point and a bad point, because right now, from now on, whatever I see, I'm supposed to be happy with it, and that's something like, I'm always happy, and it's kind of like to be boring. So I don't know. That's kind of good and bad, but I hope that someday they create, they connect this data with our emotions in order to make it balanced. And the other point
Yeah,
was,
that's true.
yeah, that's true. So, and the other point is that I saw a movie a few weeks ago. It was like Brad Pitt in it. Moneyball was the name. So it's based on a true story. Back in, I think, 90s, there was a weak baseball team, which there was a mm, statistician in that team, which was collecting actually players' data, their abilities. It converted their strength to some numbers. It scaled their strength to the numbers, and then they decided which player to buy based on their numbers, their strength, and their abilities. And interestingly, they could be the winner, or I think they were the second place after 1 or 2 years in the league. And from that point, it was like a revolution in the field of buying and selling the players in all the sport, not only the baseball, but in soccer and basketball and other sports. So
That's very,
data
very
is
correct.
important. Yeah.
Yeah. I think that like here in Toronto, like if you're a Canadian, for sure you know Raptors. I know like a company, and I know a team of engineers who they kind of like analyze Raptors. Like if you don't know Raptors, they are like a basketball team here based in Canada, in Toronto, and they play in NBA. What is that team responsible for is basically like which player, actually it's a very simple question, which player then should use like a 2 points shot or 3 points shot, like a simple question. It was their mission in the, I think in the previous season, like the last season, to answer that question. And like all this data that they were getting from like different recordings from previous years, different players and different situations is amazing, right? Like so I think the key point here is doesn't matter if you are an experienced coach. That's we respect that, but still you need some data that support your decision for who should do what. Yeah, interesting. A lot of interesting things. So I think this is something that kind of like is my favorite maybe chart from Gartner. When we get to like this conversation about data in an organization, really there are two groups of time periods that we can use that data. It's either in past or it's in future. So basically, let's say you have done something, you made a decision in your team, in your organization, and now the results are available, either good or bad. You should take a look at that one. You should take a look at the data and say, first of all, like what happened, and then second of all, you should find the data kind of like that explain the reason for that, right? This is the key point. So a lot of companies, like let's say they launch a new product, they see okay it failed, and then they try to explain that. They invite the product managers, they invite the business developers, they invite the CTO, they invite everybody, and in a room they try to explain why it failed, and then they fail again and again and again. And like the best thing that they comes to their mind is that probably we don't have like a good product manager, or we don't have like a good product sort of like a department. Let's change that. Like business developers, they don't know what they are doing, change them. But the problem is they try to explain that based on what they know. But here's the point: you don't know what you don't know, right? Like you can explain things only based on what you know. But if you make it like a culture in your organization or in your team that, hey, if you are going to reason about this incident, about this thing that happened, you need to show us the data. Based on what data you are saying that. And if you get to that habit of sort of like a data driven conversations, right? Maybe that's like a better term, data driven conversations, then you can plan for future. If you can explain what happened in past based on like some data that you have, then you can predict future. What will happen next? How can we make it happen, right? Like if we have like a goal based on the data that we have, how can we make it happen? So I think that understanding of this thing is very important. What I see in the like organizations and teams that I know is basically they use the data for the second part a lot, right? What will happen? How can we make it happen? They use it a lot. But when something fails, nobody goes and take a look at the data, which I think this is the most important part. It's more important than what's going to happen in future, because during that phase, you're going to find out that, hey, there was some data that we could collect and we didn't. There was some kind of like source of data that we didn't think about it, right? And let's kind of like recognize them and create the right pipeline to bring those data to our stream and use that. All right. Okay. So I think that this is my favorite slide. I mentioned to RS as well when we were talking about this one that I think the reason that I'm here today is for this slide, right? Because like the other things that I mentioned, you really just need to do like a Google search, right? It's none of them are kind of like a secret or like mind-blowing thing. It's just like available on Google and you can find that. But I think as like everything else, like Google can give you a little bit of like a biased sort of like a perspective when it gets to like a technologies and a strategic decisions. What I mean here is when we get to this data-driven decision making, like a lot of organizations, companies, they start by asking this question: how we can leverage AI, how we can leverage machine learning, how we can build like a data lake, how we can create like a streaming data processors and things like that. And the problem is the idea is coming from like not knowing, right? Like they don't know what they want to do. They just want to do something with machine learning, and they waste a lot of money, they waste a lot of time, and the results are disappointing. A lot of things that you hear about machine learning and AI, let me tell you something, is like a total failure in organizations because they don't know why they are doing that. So it's very important. Like here, what they have is kind of like from the market, right? What we see, what I feel, like, talking to other engineers and managers from other companies, and like, my company, this is what I know about what you should do if you want to kind of like leverage a data-driven decisions in your organization. And again, an organization, what I mean by that is just like a team of people who are working together. The first one, which is kind of like a surprise, but the first one is not about tooling. The first one is not about any strategy. The first one is just educate the whole organization. Very important. The whole organization. Don't exclude anybody from that. And the example that I have here, like in a company that had like this call center, right? They were responsible for, talking to people and trying to help them with the product. And they had like the CIO, the Chief Information Officer. And the funny part was he didn't know that that call center software that they use has like a voice to text, sort of like a package that you can kind of like convert the voice to text, and then easily you can use kind of like sentiment analytics, right? To see what's going on inside your call center. And if you don't know what is sentiment, it's just gonna tell you it's good or bad, right? It's like some machine learning algorithms available on all cloud providers like AWS and Google, super easy to use. You just give it like a characters and sentences, a paragraph, and it's going to tell you is it like a negative comment, positive, or neither of this. So why educating the whole organization is important? Because maybe you, as like a PhD data scientist, you don't know that data exists in your organization. So it's very important that everybody knows the importance of data, so they can bring ideas to the table, even if they don't have like any data science sort of like background. The other one is, okay, let's say now we educated the whole organization. I think the number two is where the organizations get confused and kind of like the chaos happens in the organization, is you should first ask questions. Like, you should have a problem, then you look for the solutions. Right now, like a lot of organizations are collecting solutions for the problems that doesn't exist, right? Or they don't know where they are. Like, they collect the data, they analyze that. And let me be kind of like honest with you, data analytics is super expensive business, right? Like the infrastructure for like a data lake is like a super expensive thing for an organization. They do all of these. They have some insights, and like the board meetings, like there are going to be some reports on the table and nobody took a look. They just put their coffee on that, and that's it, because they don't know what problem they want to solve with those data. So when it gets to the data and kind of like data driven, before you go for tooling and creating like infrastructure or something like that inside your organization. And when I say infrastructure, it includes like Google Analytics as well. Before you add Google Analytics to your website, or before you add other things, ask what question you are going to solve, right? That's super important. The next step here is, so now I educated the whole organization. They know the importance of data. They're going to bring some idea to the table. And I know what problem I want to solve. Now it's time to collect and prepare the data based on the previous thing. So here, my suggestion and kind of like my recommendation is, it really depends on the size of the organization. If you're working in like a big organization, like a large scale organization, especially here in North America and Europe, you need experts, the CIOs, right? You need expert. And I'm gonna tell you the challenge there. We have like a lot of regulations, CCPA, California law here for data in North America. We have GDPR in Europe, and recently we got like a new one from like a Brazil government. I don't know for why this is like a new sort of like a concerning thing happening in the data, that for privacy now countries started to come up with some regulations. So based on your kind of like problem that you want to solve in your organization, you should go with the solutions that kind of like match those problems. Like for example, maybe you don't really need any machine learning or AI solution really. Maybe you just all you need is like a kind of like an Excel sheet, and then you need somebody who goes on like every record and take a look and make a decision based on that. So the fact that the tooling and infrastructure and your data thing should match the need is very important. Otherwise, you're going to end up wasting a lot of time on the things that uh, you really don't need. The number five is actually another interesting one that from the beginning, if you have done like the step three correct, right? You know, if you have the right question, so now you can easily create like insights because the raw data is useless. Let me tell you, like the raw data is just even more confusing and like not helping anybody. You need to know what insights you want to get from this data that you have. And then from there, you go for kind of like the MVP of the product that can help you. Like, you know, that can be like a easily one of these data visualizations software out there. Like we have like many of them out there. Or it can be like a more complicated solution to give you some insights. So the point here is make sure from the day one you don't go with the raw data and you have like some insights that kind of like can help you. I think that the key one here as well is this needs to be like a loop, right? You know, you go and kind of like do all these steps and then you make a decision with that. Very important. When the result came in, you need to go back and take a look if it worked for you or no. If it didn't, then probably you need to move some stuff here or you need to make other decisions based on that.
So, sorry for some glitches in changing the slides. I don't know what's going on with my
No
keyboard, but
problem.
anyways, yep. I was also seeing another documentary. I'm a movie guy. You may have already noticed. So it was called The Greatest Hack, and it was about how Donald Trump became the president of the United States, and it was about the British people how they voted for Brexit, and it was all based on the data that were generated in Facebook. People posted on their social media, and the company that used all of these data to pivot, to shift people's mindsets to vote for Donald Trump. And that's these incidents they lead to strong privacy policy laws, regulations about the usage and collection of the data through different platforms, applications, and services. And I believe in short term, this will lead to increase in the cost of software development, because right now a health platform, uh, you cannot just hire a developer to develop a health platform, a telemedicine platform. They also need to know all the data, how they should actually collect this data on different clouds, how they should access it, and they are not simple. We had a conversation with Mostafa
Yeah.
a few weeks ago, and he was describing me the complexity of the software development. And for sure, in short term, it will increase. It will tremendously increase the cost of software development. But hopefully, in future, some other platforms or procedures will be created that will reduce this kind of costs. So
Yes.
yeah.
Yeah, I think that what you're referring to is this sort of like compliance called HIPAA, and like you know in my company, like Vision Critical, we are very HIPAA compliant. But I can tell you, the engineers in my team, they cry like, every time that we are going to add like a new feature, and we are saying that, hey guys, we need to comply with HIPAA for this one. There are a lot of things. I actually, to be honest with that, I respect that a lot, right? Because as like a human living on this planet, I want to make sure that all these platforms kind of like respect what they know about me, right? But just want to point out to this like a small point here, that this is like a very philosophic old conversation, that how far we can influence people, right? Like even in the advertisement market, there is this notion that, for example, in a lot of companies, you cannot target children for like junk foods, like McDonald's, or other fast foods, or any other type of junk foods. That's the law. But the question is, we really, how far and how much we can influence people based on the data that we know about them. And that's something that I'm always kind of like confused, and I don't have like really any comment on that, and I prefer to leave it to those who are expert in it. All right, I think that this one is the last sort of like slide here. If I want to wrap up my presentation today, is like, just if you take just one day sort of like a point from this presentation, is don't make decisions based on what you think is the right thing. Make decisions based on data. And all those first slides, like the first and second slides, just showed you that there are like enough data out there that can help you to make a decision. If there isn't enough data in your organization, just find the question that you want to answer, right? Like find the problem. And doesn't matter if today you cannot answer that question based on the data because you don't have the data, right? Go with building that pipeline of the data collection, right? Go with like building the tooling, the right tooling, and then based on that, in future you have the data. And again, make sure that you don't over-engineer your solution. Your team, maybe all it needs is just like Google Analytics. That's it, done, right? You don't need machine learning. You don't need stream processing. You don't need data lakes. You don't need either of these kind of like buzzwords that are out there, super expensive and like super challenging to maintain. Find a solution that matches your problem, and never forget, the starting point is not the tooling and is not the solution, is the problem. You need to define the problem before you go for the solution.
So thank you so much, Mostafa, for being here with us today. Thank you,
My pleasure.
all the people who attended this webinar. This is the end of this webinar. Now we have the Q&A session. One point that I want to mention is that actually I was talking with Professor Belletti the other day, and they're going to launch a program in the field of AI, named AI for Local Value, in October. It is fascinating, and whenever the program, the structure became available, I will shout it out. And until now, it looks interesting. And this is not now, many people are talking about AI, data, and that's what we should educate ourselves, our organizations, our company. And that's highly important. So you can see the contact information of Mostafa. I kindly asked him that anyone in this webinar can connect with him and ask him questions if they have any questions for their organizations about the field that they should follow. So if you have any questions, you can unmute yourselves, and yeah.
Sure. And yeah, I just wanted to mention it would be my pleasure to answer any questions like here or even later on LinkedIn. Uh, I think that you need to help.
Okay.
Okay, now,
Rafa, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Professor,
So
yeah.
I really, first of all, thank you very much to you for making the presentation and the organizers. I really have enjoyed this. I've been
Pleasure.
typing like crazy as you were talking, and I think I got three major points out of your presentation. I really like that last slide. So that was number one, I guess, that I took down. Second is the point that you're making that we got to rely more on data than our own judgments or intuitions or personal experience. I think that that's an excellent point. The question that I got, I put some points in the chat there for you. I was writing down, trying to come back with what I'm going to call drivers, and the article you just shared with us called components. And you, while the presentation was on data, you really talked about a whole variety of other things. And I kind of put them down on that in the chat. So I think that you've got the data pipeline, what you refer to, the algorithms that you use to be able to do something with that data, you know, something that I'm going to call an AI layer because that's what I'm familiar with, but you know, you're going to experiment with that data to do things that, so you can learn and figure it out with the algorithm that you got it right or not. Then you referred about infrastructure, that's the fourth element. And then you made an excellent point that really basically said, and for the data to make sense, for you to collect it or do something with it, you got to have the right customer mindset or the right question, the right problems, and so forth and so on. And then there's this idea that you did not talk about, but I wanted to add, which is about the ecosystem. Where does the data come from? How is that gathered? What are the relationships with the... Actually, you did refer to it. You did talk about the importance of relationships. And the last one is the talent. This is the people that are actually going to do things with it. If you have the right talent, everything is easier. If you have to educate everybody, it's really more difficult to get anything done. And my specific question is, are these the seven? Is there an eighth? Did I get that right? Because it's obviously more than just data. It's a whole box around the data. Is that
Right.
the right elements? Is there a better
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that the whole sort of like the points here is kind of like what I was talking about the number 7 talent, and kind of like I think that you're referring to that slide about educating the whole organization. What I mean, I want to clarify there is, for sure, you cannot expect somebody from, let's say, call center or somebody like a staff in your building become like a data scientist. That's like impossible. You need a lot of background. But the point that I was trying to articulate there was, you need to educate everybody just to make sure that you recognize all the data sources there. Because again, you can bring like somebody like a data scientist from outside of your organization, but maybe he doesn't know about all the data that you can have access to, right? You know, and kind of like I gave this example of like this call center here in Canada, that the CIO really didn't know the software can have like a voice to sort of like a speech to text component that you can use that for sentiment analysis. For sure, you need talents to do the real work. No question there. But still, you need to make sure that you educate the whole organization in terms of like very basics. You just need to let them know the importance of the data in your organization. So in their day-to-day kind of like operation, they can come up with some ideas. Hey, in the department that I work, we have like this data. Does it help you? Or we have like kind of like this data source from 10 years ago. Does it help you? Because again, there can be some gems in your organization that you as a talent, as a data scientist, as a CIO or CTO, you really don't know about it.
Okay, so I'm going. Thank you very much, Mostafa. I'm going to add that eighth point to the seven that I wrote down as you were speaking. And the eighth point is, and it's really important how we educate everybody, not because we want to turn them into scientists, data scientists, but because we want to understand where the data is coming from and what's possible within an organization. Did I get that right?
Exactly. Yep, you got it, sir. Exactly. That's how it's going to work. And down the field, you see this thing a lot inside the organization, that how much data they have and they don't know about it because they are inside this small box with some data scientists trying to solve the problem, while they have like a lot of data out there inside like different departments, and they just don't know about it. So yeah, I would say that's exactly what I think.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mostafa. I enjoyed this tremendously. Thank you.
My pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor. All right. So if anyone else have any questions, you can unmute yourself and ask.
All right.
If I can make another comment, the book that Mostafa at the very beginning has provided a good link to an article published in the Harvard Business Review. The book behind it, behind that article, is really good, really, really good. So if you can get your hands on the book, I would suggest that everybody reads it. It's a great book. So thank you very much for the reference.
No problem. Yeah, that's an amazing book. I think that it kind of like got to Canada recently, like before I was trying to order that from Amazon, and it was coming from the States. But recently I found it in the Indigo. So probably easier if you are looking for that book. So should be easier to get that. As it's like a very new book. It just published, I think, in 2019, if I'm not wrong, end of 2019. So like a lot of methods and kind of like a strategy inside the book are like the market sort of like trends.
So Mostafa, is it the same book that you were looking for every day on checking your mailbox?
Oh, no, that's not that one.
Okay.
That's not the one. Yeah, I got that actually, finally.
Okay, you got it finally. All right.
Yeah.
Okay. So I guess that would be it. Thank you so much, everyone here, for joining us being here with us this webinar. We have recorded this webinar, and we will send out the recorded video along with the takeaways and important messages that we discussed here today. You can follow our social media for more webinars, and please tell us your feedbacks in different channels, whether you like the webinar or not, or how we can improve it in future. So again, thank you all. Have a good day and night, and take care of yourself. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Have a good day.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.